Where Paths Entwine, Part 2. After the rest, the village of Waymere woke up, veiled in a fragile hush. Mist threaded between the slender, white towers, curling through archways where starlight still clung like dew. From afar, it looked serene, a city of marble dreams suspended in peace. They moved quietly through its narrow lanes, shadows among light. Time led the way, his hood drawn low, his eyes alert beneath the calm of his expression. Ferry followed close, his pulse steady yet watchful. Una and Parsley trailed behind, whispering to one another in murmurs that barely brushed the air. Everywhere they turned, the village shimmered with gentle life. Fairies strolled the streets, tall and graceful, their faces like veined glass trailing faint glows. Merchants sold wreaths of luminous herbs and vials of silvery dust. Musicians played flutes that sounded like birdsong, and laughter echoed from the courtyards. And yet, not a trace of fear, not a whisper of the enemy. How are we meant to find an enemy among smiles? Una muttered, tugging her shawl tighter. By watching, Time replied, his voice low, and by listening. The enemy hides in plain sight. It always does. They passed a group of villagers sitting by a fountain, their faces serene as they shared bread and tea. Ferry caught snippets of conversation, mentions of weather, of crops, of songs. Nothing more. A sense of absurd normality hung over it all. Ferry exchanged a glance with Una. She rolled her eyes. Yes, clearly the spawn of darkness are just too busy discussing tea blends to attack us. Parsley shushed her gently. Don't jest. He means it. The shapeshifters could be any of them. Ferry frowned. But surely there would be a sign. Something unnatural? Time stopped, glancing toward him. You'd hope so, but the enemy wears faces like masks. Sometimes it doesn't even know what it is anymore. That's what makes it dangerous. They continued their silent patrol through the cobbled streets, weaving between archways and through gardens blooming with night flowers. The deeper they went, the more the beauty of the place weighed on Ferry. Every house seemed carved from starlight itself, every courtyard soaked in quiet grace. And yet his gut told him something was wrong. Too perfect. Too peaceful. Hours passed, and they regrouped near a round courtyard paved with pale stones. Rosemary, Sage, Matilda, and Finn were already there, pretending to browse a market stall. From afar, they looked like any group of travelers, tired, curious, harmless. But Rosemary's expression was tense. Nothing, she whispered as Time approached. No rumors, no unease, not even a whisper of a shadow. Then either we were misled, Sage muttered darkly, or the danger is still sleeping. Time's jaw tightened. It's never sleeping. We were supposed to meet with the others at the agreed spot, and they didn't come. Or couldn't show themselves. Something is not right. Be careful, all of you, he added, looking at Ferry in a particular way. They split again, smaller now, drifting through alleys and side streets. Less noticeable that way. Ferry walked beside Una and Parsley, their footsteps muffled on the smooth stone. It was then, turning down a quiet lane lined with ivy-clad cottages, that they heard it. A cry, sharp and desperate, slicing through the air. Una froze. What was that? Another cry followed, higher, trembling with anguish. Ferry felt it in his bones. Without waiting for Time's call, they ran. Down the lane, the noise grew louder. Voices, pleading, arguing. They reached a small courtyard, lit by the faint glow of mushrooms and starlight vines that crept up the walls. And there, before one of the houses, unfolded a scene that made Ferry's blood run cold. A majestic fairy woman stood at the doorway, her robes of silver and white trailing along the ground. In her arms, she held a newborn swaddled in a shimmering cloth. The baby's small cries pierced the air. Behind her, another woman stumbled out, younger, frailer, her golden hair tangled and her face streaked with tears. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Please, my lady. He's my child. Don't take him." The regal fairy didn't turn. Her expression was remote, carved from something older and harder than mercy. "It is the law," came another voice, an elder fairy stepping from the doorway, her tone calm, unyielding. "The child was born under the 7th star. His path is set. He will be raised in the Hall of Spirits and fulfill what was foretold." The young mother fell to her knees. "He's just a baby. He needs me, please. His destiny needs him more," the elder said softly. Before anyone could move, the majestic fairy slowly lifted into the air. The baby's cries faded into the wind as she rose higher and higher until she was nothing but a glimmer against the starlit sky. The young mother collapsed into the dust, wailing. Una gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She took a step forward, trembling. "We can't just stand here. We have to do something." Time's hand shot out, catching her wrist. "Stop. Don't interfere." "Don't interfere?" Una cried, twisting in his grip. "She's taking her child. You expect me to just watch? You'll get us all killed." Time hissed. "You don't understand the laws of this realm. This isn't your fight." Una's voice cracked. "Every mother and child is my fight." Ferry looked between them, torn, his chest tightening with helplessness. The young fairy woman's sobs tore at him, but he knew deep down, that he could not change what was written here. Not now. Una turned to him, desperate. "Ferry, please. You can stop her. You're the lost son. You can command them." Ferry shook his head, his throat dry. "I can't. Not yet. I don't even understand half of what's happening in this world." The words broke her. Her face twisted with anguish and fury, tears streaking her cheeks as she clung to him for a moment, shaking. "Then what's the point of all this?" she whispered. "Of saving Akna, if Akna's already broken?" Time's voice softened, but carried an edge. "Una, enough. We can't help her. Not this way." He gently pulled her back, and Una let him, though her body trembled with rage. The mother's cries had quieted now. Only a hollow, rhythmic sob remained, echoing off the stone walls. Ferry's heart felt heavy as lead. The air seemed colder somehow, the starlight harsher. No one spoke for a long time. Then, slowly, Una stepped forward again. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes burned, fierce and bright as a comet. She stood before the group, her fox cub pressed to her chest, and spoke in a voice that trembled, not with grief, but with conviction. "When I am going to rule over this world," she said, each word clear as the toll of a bell, "no child will ever be apart from his mother. I swear it, on all winds and all the moons and the suns." Her words hung in the air like a spell. Even Time said nothing, his face unreadable. Ferry felt something stir in him. Not hope, not quite courage, but the weight of a promise. He looked at Una, and for the first time since the journey began, he saw not the jester, nor the dreamer, nor the impulsive young fairy who laughed at shadows. He saw a leader. The wind picked up, scattering silver dust from the glowing vines. It whispered through the courtyard like a sigh from the stars themselves, carrying Una's vow into the dark skies above. And as they turned away, leaving the weeping mother behind, Ferry couldn't help but think, perhaps this world didn't need saving from the long night alone, but from its own cruel light. Quiet descended softly upon Waymere once more, blanketing the village in the shimmering glow of distant stars. The faint hum of laughter and music drifted through the air, carried on the cool breath of the wind. Lanterns of pale blue light hung from the archways, and the white towers glowed faintly, as though remembering the last touch of starlight. As darkness deepened, the Fae folk began to gather at the crossroads, the heart of the village where all paths met. Here, the stone roads curved and intertwined like silver ribbons, leading toward unseen places, the forest of whispers, the riverlands, the high passes of the mountains, and beyond all of them, gleaming faintly in the distance, the glass castle. Ferry had seen it before only from afar, a mirage that shifted like starlight over water. But now, as he stood beside Rosemary beneath the canopy of lights, he could see its delicate spires shimmering against the horizon. Brighter than the star, brighter even than the skies that seemed to bend toward it in awe. "It's beautiful," he murmured. Rosemary smiled faintly. "It's more than that," she said. "It's the center of Akna, the place where every road, every fate, and every secret comes together. They say the castle stands where the first starbeam of solace ever touched our world." Ferry glanced around at the crossroads, where Fae of every kind were gathering. Tall, majestic elves with silver hair and eyes like molten opal sat beside small gnomes with red caps and button noses. "It's a custom," Rosemary explained, watching as a group of fairies began to sing in harmony. Each time, before the rest, they gathered to share tales, songs, stories, laughter. "This is a place of crossing paths, after all. Travelers from all lands come here." It said no one leaves Waymere without carrying a story away. The songs rose into the night, soft, lilting melodies that tangled with the smell of roasting chestnuts and sweet herbs. Ferry felt it all seep into him, the warmth, the calm, the illusion of peace. For a moment, he wished he could forget everything else, the doubts, the whispers, the shadows growing in his heart. But peace had become a stranger to him. At the outskirts of the village, where the tall towers gave way to smaller cottages with mossy roofs and crooked windows, the light dimmed, the glamour faded. The fae folk here were smaller, less adorned, their clothes simple, their laughter quieter but no less sincere. Ferry wandered down toward the stables, where the air smelled of hay and smoke. A faint glow came from a fire pit, and beside it sat an old fairy woman, her back bent but her hands deft as she stirred a cauldron that hung above the flames. The scent that rose from it was earthy and comforting, root soup, thick and rich. Around her, a handful of gnomes sat cross-legged, their round faces flushed with warmth and wine. They were teasing one another in good humor, their laughter bubbling through the cool air. "Althea, tell him!" one of the gnomes cried, his voice high and merry. "Tell him what you said the last time we met, about old Borum falling asleep in his own stew." The old fairy chuckled, her voice like the creak of old wood. "Borum always was a fool for food. Said the stew was so good he wanted to live in it." The group erupted in laughter. Ferry smiled faintly and approached, drawn by the warmth and the smell of the soup. Althea noticed him and gave a small nod. "Another traveler," she said. "You've got the look of one who's seen more questions than answers. Come, have a bowl." Ferry hesitated, then sat down among them. The gnomes greeted him cheerfully, passing him a wooden bowl filled with steaming soup. It was thick with roots and herbs, the kind of food that spoke of home, though Ferry no longer knew what that word meant. As he ate, the conversation shifted. One of the gnomes leaned forward, his small eyes twinkling. "Althea, tell us again the story of the lost prince," he said eagerly. "You tell it better than anyone in the village." The others nodded, settling down as the fire crackled. Ferry froze. The old fairy sighed, her eyes drifting toward the flames. "You've heard it 100 times, she said. "Then make it 101, the gnome insisted. Althea smiled faintly. "Very well." Her voice grew softer, almost like a lullaby. "Long ago, before the long night first stirred, a child was born beneath a silver star. The queen and king of Acna rejoiced, for it was said the boy carried the mark of the solace upon his brow, the sign of light. He would bring harmony to the realms of Fae." The gnomes nodded, listening with solemn eyes. "Their love for him was boundless," she went on. The child's laughter filled the halls of the glass castle. His tiny footsteps echoed through its crystal corridors. Even the stars were said to burn brighter when he smiled. Her voice lowered, but joy is fragile. On the eve of the long night, when the skies turned black and the stars hid their faces, the child was taken, stolen from his cradle by shadows none could name. The queen wept until her tears turned to silver. The king's heart turned to stone. The fire popped. Someone shifted. "Who took him?" one of the gnomes whispered, though they all knew the question. Althea's gaze flickered toward the dark beyond the firelight. "There were spies," she said slowly. "Spies in the glass castle, waiting for their moment. But time buries truth. The names were lost, perhaps on purpose. All that remains is a whisper carried by the wind." Another gnome leaned forward. "A whisper of what?" The old fairy's face grew grave. "Of revenge." Silence fell. "They say it was a plot," Althea continued, "woven by one close to the queen and king, one who felt wronged by them. It is said the queen forbade him from marrying their daughter, the princess of Acna." The gnomes gasped. Even Ferry froze. "Yes," Althea said, her voice steady, "the runaway princess. But she didn't love any of her kind. She loved a human. A love that defied every law of Acna. And for that, she was cast out, stripped of honor, stripped of home. She left the glass castle and chose the small, meaningless life of humans. And he could not bear it." "Who was he?" one gnome whispered. The old fairy stirred the soup slowly. "He was the first of the Amalgams, a man both of light and shadow. His name was..." She looked up, and her eyes gleamed with ancient memory. "Stefan." The name fell like a stone into silence. The gnomes shifted uncomfortably. Even the fire seemed to falter. Ferry felt the blood drain from his face. The bowl in his hands trembled. Althea's voice went on, softer now, almost mournful. They say he needed the child, for if the prophecy is true, only the lost prince could awaken the moon's stone, the heart of all magic. Whoever holds the stone controls the pulse of the world. It can end wars. It can bring light to the deepest dark. She hesitated, staring into the flames. It can bring life, though what kind of life, no one truly knows. But for that, it has to charge 5 times, in 5 different worlds. And that is very hard. It barely occurs. For the stone only becomes with power when there are many ways, and those ways rarely come together. What ways? A gnome asked, forgetting about his soup altogether. Althea stared at the fire. Well, first, there has to be a stone keeper. Then the stone has to become the spear of justice to charge, each time in a different world. And it only charges in the presence of the lost son of fairies. If one single way of those is not met, it cannot bring life. The gnomes murmured among themselves, their laughter gone. One of them whispered, "But the stone was lost, wasn't it? Gone forever." "Lost," Althea agreed. "But not forever. Such power never vanishes." Ferry couldn't breathe. His heart pounded in his ears. The name Stefan echoed again and again, twisting in his mind like a curse. Lord Stefan, the man he trusted, the one who had guided him, who had sent him here, had taken the lost prince? Had taken him? He rose abruptly, the bench scraping against the stones. The gnomes, startled, staring at him in confusion. "Are you all right, young lad?" Althea asked gently, but Ferry couldn't answer. His throat was tight, his chest hollow. Without a word, he turned and stumbled into the darkness, the cold air sharp in his lungs. He walked blindly at first, then faster, until the laughter and light of the crossroads faded behind him. The music, the stories, the smell of soup, all of it melted into the hum of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. He reached the edge of the village, where the starlight painted the white road silver. He leaned against a fence post, gripping it as though the world might fall away beneath him. The faces of everyone he knew flashed through his mind. Time's calm eyes, Una's fierce promises, Matilda's sorrow. But above all, Lord Stefan's face, now burned with betrayal. Was he only a tool? A pawn in a game he didn't even understand? He thought of the prophecy, the stolen child, the moonstone. The words it can bring life echoed like a whisper he could not silence. The night wind stirred his cloak. Above, the glass castle shimmered faintly on the horizon, beautiful, distant, and cruel. Ferry stared at it for a long time, his heart thundering with grief and anger. For the first time since leaving the human world, he wished he had never crossed into Akna, because now he wasn't sure who he truly was, a savior, a son, or simply a fairy child who'd been stolen under a silver star. The wind carried a chill through the dark. Ferry stood at the edge of the village, staring toward the faint line of the horizon where the shadows gathered like a storm. His hands were trembling, not from the cold, but from the weight of everything pressing on him. He couldn't tell where the truth ended and lies began anymore. "Garrett," Time's voice came from behind him, low but steady. "Don't wander off alone." "I need to think," Ferry said without turning. His voice was hoarse, threaded with exhaustion. "Please, Time. Just leave me be." But Time stepped closer, his boots crunching on gravel. "You've been thinking for too long. Whatever you're looking for out there, you won't find it in the dark." Ferry clenched his fists. "I can't think here. Every face I see, every word I hear feels like another secret waiting to strangle me." He turned sharply, his eyes burning. "Don't you understand? I don't know what's real anymore." Time's jaw tightened. "You think walking off into the shadows will make things clearer?" "I think," Ferry said through gritted teeth, "it's the only way I'll know if the shadows are truly out there." He started walking again, down the slope that led toward the outskirts of Waymere. The music from the crossroads faded behind them, laughter and song dissolving into whispers. The light of the lanterns dimmed, replaced by the pale shimmer of starlight on dew. "Garrett," Time said again, following him, "listen to me. Darkness hides many faces, and not all of them are made of light." Ferry didn't stop. "Then maybe it's time I saw them for myself." "Don't do this." "Why not?" Ferry snapped, turning around. His voice echoed through the empty fields. "Because you said so? Because I'm supposed to trust you? You and your half-truths, and your riddles, and your warnings about things that never come?" Time's expression was unreadable in the dim light. "You think I'm lying to you. I think you're hiding something. All of you are. You say we're here to protect the village, but from what? I've seen no enemy, no threat. Only whispers and shadows. Maybe there is no war. Maybe this is just another story to keep me from asking the right questions. He took a step back, his voice trembling. And maybe the real enemy isn't out there at all. Time's eyes darkened. You're treading dangerous ground, Garrett. Am I? Ferry said, his anger boiling over. Or is that what you want me to think? Every time I start to see the cracks, you tell me to stop asking questions. You tell me to trust you. But how can I trust anyone when I don't even know who I am? He turned and strode away, his cloak whipping in the wind. The path narrowed as it wound through the last cottages, where the lights inside were dim and flickering. The trees loomed larger here, their branches whispering secrets in the dark. Garrett! Time called. His voice strained now. Stop! Please! But Ferry didn't stop. His heart was hammering too fast, his thoughts too loud. He just needed air, space, silence. He just needed the noise in his mind to stop for a single heartbeat. Then, somewhere in the dark ahead, he felt it. The stillness shift. The air grew colder. The shadows between the trees thickened. The stars above seemed to waver, as if holding their breath. Ferry slowed, his anger dissolving into unease. Time, he whispered. Time was only a few steps behind him. Garrett, come back, now. But it was already too late. The shadows stirred, not like smoke, but like something alive. They moved together, merging, stretching until shapes began to take form. Glints of metal caught the starlight. Faces emerged, pale, cold, and expressionless beneath the shimmer of silver helmets. The palace guards. Their armor gleamed faintly in the starlight, each breastplate etched with the sigil of the circled moon, the mark of the royal house. Their shields rose as one, and the air filled with the soft hiss of drawn spears. Ferry froze, his breath caught in his throat. By the stars, Una whispered somewhere behind him. She was accompanied by all his companions. How did they? Before she could finish, a voice barked. Surround them. From every side, guards appeared. From the trees, from behind the cottages, from the mists that crawled along the road. Within moments, Ferry and his companions were encircled, a ring of silver and steel glinting in the faint light. Ferry's pulse thundered. He pulled out his sword, but there were too many of them, dozens, maybe more. What's happening? He managed, his voice breaking. A guard stepped forward, his spear lowered. By order of the High Council, you are all under arrest for conspiracy and treason against the crown. Treason, Una cried. That's madness. Before anyone could answer, Sage shouted furiously, pointing toward the shadows. Stott, you traitor. Enough, the guard captain barked. Chaos rippled through the group. Rosemary clung to Parsley, both of them trembling. Finn hid behind Sage's leg, his small face white with fear. Una screamed as a guard seized her by the arm, trying to pull her away. But Ferry heard none of it, because in the chaos, he searched for her, only for her. His breath caught. There, Matilda stood ringed by 5 guards, their spears drawn toward her as if she were a monstrous threat, rather than a single unarmed girl. Their armor glinted sharp and cold around her like the jaws of some great beast ready to swallow her whole. Matt, the word tore from him, raw and desperate, panic clawing up his chest like something alive. And then, for the first time since they left the Cloud Fortress, she looked back, their eyes locked across the choking dark. And in that single heartbeat, the world narrowed, every sound smothered, every face forgotten. Her lips parted, his name barely forming, barely a breath, but they did whisper it. Ferry, and he saw her, really saw her. Not as the brave, stubborn girl who'd followed him this far, but a frightened human, fragile and alone in a world that despised her kind. And he knew she understood. He was just as helpless. The space between them felt endless, and yet it hurt like they were being torn apart. He tried to move toward her, but a guard's blade flashed across his path, forcing him back. And in that moment, Ferry felt it, the terrible truth that he might lose her. Time struggled against the guards holding him. Garrett, don't do anything reckless. We can talk our way out of this. But Ferry wasn't listening. He was looking around, at his friends surrounded, at Una fighting to break free, at Sage trembling with rage, at the ring of silver armor closing in tighter. There was only one way out, the far and away charm. He could do it. He could call the spell, send them all away, far from here, somewhere safe. It would strip him of his powers, drain every drop of magic left in his blood. He would become human, weak, but they would live. He took a deep breath and raised his hands. Time's eyes widened. No, he said sharply. "Garrett, don't." Ferry ignored him. The wind around him began to stir, faint and shimmering, whispering through the grass like silver threads. "Garrett, don't do it." Time shouted again. "You need your powers. Listen to me." The air trembled with magic, rippling outward. "Ferry, look at me." Time's voice broke with desperation. "Don't do it. Trust me. Just this once. Just don't do it." Ferry hesitated. His eyes met Time's, pleading, furious, afraid. For the first time, Ferry saw the crack in him, the fear behind the stoic mask, and that fear made him falter. His hands lowered, the shimmer fading into silence. In that heartbeat of hesitation, the guards surged forward. Rough hands seized his arms, taking his sword away and shoving him to the ground. His knees hit the cold stone. Someone shouted his name. Una's scream tore through the night. Sage roared in anger. And then, everything went dark. The light drained from the air, swallowed by something vast and cold. The stars dimmed. The starlight flickered. The silence that followed was deep, heavy, eternal. Ferry lifted his head weakly, his vision blurring. Around him, his friends were on their knees, disarmed and trembling. The guards stood motionless, like statues of shadow and steel. A single black cloud tore itself open across the sky, unfurling like a wound. It spread, swallowing the last trembling threads of starlight. No constellations, no moon, only blackness, heavy and absolute. It was as though the sky had closed its eyes and would never open them again. A chill crawled across Ferry's skin, burrowing into bone. He felt the world tilt, felt an ancient dread settle upon his heart. And in that endless, breathless void, he understood. Too late, he understood. The long night had come, and with it, the end of every fragile hope he had ever held.